Hey everybody, this is Georgia Stathis at starcycles.com with a few comments on the upcoming retrograde of Chiron on July 30th at about 27, almost 28 degrees of Aries. Not quite the 29th degree, but at the end. You know, Chiron is not a planet, but it was a comet that was discovered in the late 70s, right around the same time that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross started the hospice movement, the death and dying movement. It was also around the time that a lot of the holistic health began at that time. And Chiron is about a 52-year return cycle, which is why when people hit around 52 years of age, and if they live as long as many people are living to about 104 years of age, they have the return of Chiron for the first time at 52 and the second return of Chiron in the early 100s. And Chiron in mythology, and many of you know that I have a very strong interest in mythology, was called the wounded healer. That's usually the tagline they give him. There's a reason for that. But before we get there, I'll give you a little bit of my take on Chiron. Since he was a half horse and half human, also half mortal, half god, half high intelligence and half animal intelligence, that I often call him a hybrid model. And I have seen, whenever I've seen Chiron, and I've looked at Chiron for a very long time now, I see wherever it's moving through the horoscope that there is a development in that area of the horoscope that has to do with a hybrid model of whatever is involved in that person's career or vocation. That's because the comet Chiron orbits between Saturn, which we can see, which is considered to be traditional, structured. Saturn is the last planet we can actually see in the universe when we look out into the sky. After that, you have to have a telescope. Then we go out to Uranus, which we can't see. Uranus is the out-of-the-box thinker, the planet that was just discovered in the late 1700s, has a lot to do with revolution, lots of chaos, waking up to one's soul's purpose. They're very different energies. One is very traditional and almost strict, and the other one is, let's just do it for the hell of it. And so what we see is Chiron always orbiting between the two, and many people like Barbara Hand Clow and many other people who've written about it have called it a bridge. And I call it the hybrid, because in terms of the models in business or in terms of the models in our industries, if somebody allows to think outside the box, I mean, that's half the battle, is just letting yourself imagine and think outside the box, that these things can create hybrid models. Now, since Chiron is not going to finish in the sign of Aries, where it's been for many, many years now, it'll leave Aries briefly in the spring of 26, then it'll come back to Aries again, and then finish up in the spring of 2027. Since it's at the end, very close to the end right now. And also, I might add, what we call the decadent, the Sagittarius section of Aries, that there is a lot of issues here with travel right now, and airlines and airline flights and costs going up for travelers, and the inability to get visas that are more affordable, or the inability to get affordable vaccines or inoculations when traveling to certain parts of the world. This is all what seems to be a problem. And, you know, it's an interesting thing when there's lots and lots of problems that start piling up, somebody, someplace along the road usually figures out an alternate solution. And that's where Chiron comes in, is the bridge between an old way of doing things and a new way of doing things. And so wherever Chiron is moving in your chart right now, it's going to be about almost 28 degrees on July 30th. It will retrograde all the way back to about January 2 of 2026, when it goes direct at about 22 degrees of Aries, is where there's a kind of rethink of how you can hybridize, if there's such a word, I don't know, how you can kind of look at things that you've been pioneering. For example, if you work for yourself, things that you've been, like I work for myself for almost 50 years now, how can I make it so that I work more efficiently and yet serve others? So these are the challenges right now. And I did a podcast a while back about the new cycle of Uranus entering Gemini, which just started on July 7th and is kind of like a preview at the movies till November 7th. The ideas are there. They're just not ready to burst forward into full blossom. And I think a key thing to do right now is we're going through this very transitional period with so many planets that are slow cycles, having moved from the last degrees of their signs of the zodiac to the new degrees, then going back to the last degrees, that there is a huge amount of transition going on right now. And the transition is really the moment in time to think about how you can do things differently, either in your professional life or your personal life, and how to unencumber yourself. I think that's the other piece of it too, is how to, instead of being the hero for everybody and doing it for everybody, how to say, okay, how to learn how to delegate. And I think that's important because Aries tends to want to do it all itself, all by itself, the warrior mentality, the warrioress mentality. I'm going to do it myself. Somebody needs help. I'm going to run out and save them. But this Chiron in Aries is saying we can't do it all for ourselves. We have to ask other people to work with us. And I think since Uranus entered Gemini, there is this opportunity, even though things may seem very bleak in the news, which they are. There is no question. Things are down now. Things are bleak. That in those moments of bleakness is where the new ideas come out. And so I just wanted to share that with you. You might be feeling, as Chiron is stationing to go retrograde this week and next, being very tired, which is very typical when planets go retrograde. You get tired. My personal view is that whenever a planet or a comet, in this case, goes retrograde, it really is more of an opportunity time to rethink, rework, repurpose, release. I think release is key here. Let go of things you really know that you're not going to be doing again, to clean the chutes, to clean the drawers, to clean the tabletops, to clean the encumbrances in one's life so that there's space for something new to come in. And, in closing, I'm back in California now. In my garage, every time I drive in, on a blackboard, I have 3 sayings. And you will hear these from me on and off throughout the various podcasts and lectures that I give. And one of them is, the space for what you want is already filled with what you're settling for instead. So think about that. Think about how you can shift the way you're doing something that keeps tripping you up in your life, and how you can let something go, and maybe how you can delegate something, or maybe there's a part of your business that just doesn't work, even though you love it, to let it go, to allow something in. And most importantly, and I think this is key, is engage younger people to work with you. Uranus and Gemini is I think wonderful for the younger generation, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is younger people. Younger people have young thoughts and new thought, and they know how to do all these things, the digital stuff and, the podcasting. So, and even if you're not that old like I am, but, you're in, you're moving into early middle age, there are other people there that need work, that could solve a problem that you may be trying to solve that's been taking you forever, that you just give them the order and they can solve it in like 10 minutes. So that's the other piece here, is learning to delegate, learning to let go of things that just aren't working anymore, and not being attached. I think the beauty of Uranus and Gemini, even though it does have a few problems, because it does always show up when there's wars in the world, but it is a problem solver. And I think the beauty of it is that since it's in an air sign, Uranus is in Gemini, it's an air sign, it's not being as attached to things as we have been for the last 7 years with Uranus and Taurus. And you've got this window between July 7th and November 7th. So use it to the best of your ability. Then be ready, November 7th to early spring. The other stuff that needs to be unencumbered is going to show up and come up to the surface. But this is about the time that Chiron will be going direct and problem solving to move on with your life and change things so that you have more freedom. Chiron is in the Sagittarius. There's a need for more freedom. How can you have more freedom? You simplify your life. It doesn't mean you throw your life away. It means you reorganize it in a way that works for you. So with that said, have a great week, and I'll see you in the future. Bye.